Business Green Means Business, a podcast about what companies are doing for a more sustainable economy. Today my guest is Lubomila Jordanova. She's CEO and founder of the Berlin-based startup Plan A. Plan A helps companies with their carbon accounting by collecting data, visualizing it, and suggesting ways that companies can improve their environmental performance. Among their clients are investment bank Société Générale and consulting firm BCG. In this interview, we talk about carbon accounting, the problem with sustainability reporting, and carbon offsetting. Lubomila, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me here, Melina.
So, for those who don't know it yet, what is Plan A?
Plan A is a software as a service company based in Berlin that exists since 2017 that helps businesses with carbon accounting and ESG measurement. We have a software that automates the process of data collection, visualizes everything, and then gives recommendations on how you can improve, reduce your emissions, and also get a better ESG performance score.
Okay, so before we get into the details of how this software actually works, I wanted to talk to you about momentum because you recently raised $3 million, right?
Yes.
And one of the investors was SoftBank, which is a very well-known investor. They own a multi-billion-dollar venture capital fund that has invested in Silicon Valley's main stars. And what's pretty impressive is that until a couple of years ago, you were actually bootstrapping, right? So what changed in the meantime? What changed in Plan A, and maybe what changed in the zeitgeist?
I think in the first few years since we existed, which was a totally different reality, I would say, than what it is now, we were looking into finding a scalable model. And the moment when we found it, we essentially started getting more acquainted with the venture capital topic and essentially then building our network within the space. I think the time itself, in 2016, there was barely any talk about sustainability in the venture capital sphere. People thought that sustainability was not necessarily something that can bring a lot of money, and it was mainly for the NGO, kind of factors. And in 2019, I guess there was a bit of a wake-up call. First Fridays for Future was definitely a defining element, but then also a lot of discussion started. And then the moment when COVID happened, this became the main topic, which is why we also have been able to benefit and have been able to onboard such prominent investors as well.
Who are the other investors in this latest round?
Demeter, it's a well-known French fund that has 1 billion under management with strong focus on clean tech. They've been doing this for decades. They have quite a long history of investing in hardware and quite complex technologies focused on sustainability and implementation of improved processes in companies and so on. And the other one is Coparian. It's a German fund that has invested in companies like Grover and has more focus on traditional tech.
What are your plans for the money you just raised?
The money have already been proving quite useful because we are basically hiring a lot at the moment. We have more than doubled since the beginning of the year and looking to double again by the end of the year. So pretty fast growth. We're also starting to expand more actively in different geographies. So we're going to be opening an office in France, which is one of our prime markets, as we have quite a lot of big clients there. And we're also looking into starting to actually pay for marketing. We've never paid. Everything so far has been organic. Not a single interview I've given has been because we sponsored an event or something like that. And, now we're going to start doing marketing, not to sponsor events for my speaking, but more to enable essentially just usual marketing spends to be possible.
Okay. So let's get into the details of how the software actually works. So what data do you source? Where does that come from? How do these assessments look like for the client?
Companies are actually quite complex in terms of what data they sit on. And there's a lot of systems that they use that are totally different from one another. And we essentially navigate this complexity. What we enable a company to do is to add this environmental layer to their decision making, essentially connecting their ERP systems, anything related to accounting, anything related to their purchases, expenses, and so on. And by connecting all of this, they get a snapshot of their performance on an environmental level. Because from all the data that we've gathered, we're able to translate this into environmental KPIs, such as CO2 emissions, such as plastic consumption, water consumption, and essentially give them this missing layer to allow for their the way the companies operated and the way they spend their money to be a bit more environmentally focused than what it is today, which in the usual case is either non-existent or it's kind of in the beginning of the journey.
Okay, so data comes from the client itself.
Yes, and we combine it with internal data to plan A as well. We have a lot of benchmarks, a lot of databases that we tap into. So we combine internal and external data, fill in all the gaps where the client, for example, doesn't have certain data points to build this picture of kind of how does the company look from an environmental perspective. What we pride ourselves on a lot is that the Plan A team is predominantly climate data scientists. Since day one, we have been with a strong focus on that, which is quite unique. As none of the companies that are on the market have this edge, and that's quite of a, I would say, complex path to take, because normally it extends the time until you're able to, release certain features and so on, just because you need to do a lot more meticulous calculations related to how to translate something into emissions. But at the end of the day, it pays off because you're a lot more accurate, you're aligned to the regulatory frameworks and requirements, and you're also giving a good and accurate and correct snapshot of where the company can improve in their impact to the planet.
Okay, I want to get into that a little deeper. I know it might be complicated, but can you try to explain, how do you translate this data you get from clients into emissions? What are the benchmarks you use? How does that magic take place?
So any data point that is sitting in a company, let's say kilowatts per hour, how much electricity the company is taking or is consuming, can be translated into CO2 emissions by the use of something called conversion factors. These conversion factors come from science. They are normally they could be on a continent level, they could be on a world level. What we use is on a hyper local level, sometimes even to the city level. And you're basically able to translate these kilowatts into CO2 emissions. The conversion factors differ across different countries just because the consumption patterns are different, the efficiency of the technology is different, and also kind of the age of the technology is different. So the more local the conversion factors are, the more accurate you are, and the more actually close you are to the reality element of how much CO2 has been emitted. And once we translate this, what ends up happening is that our system is able to create some benchmarks and is able to essentially say your performance is in the 10th best in comparison to everyone else that is within your own geography. We also make comparisons to the same industry. We make comparisons to different industries, and these benchmarks are internal to Plan A. We've been gathering them over the last 5 years since we've existed. And this is something that is really unique because it gives us quite of a particular edge to how we enable clients to take an action on the data. So it doesn't stay static. It's something that, whatever, I have that amount of CO2, it's out of context, so I don't understand what it really means, so I'm not going to do anything about it. We actually give a lot of context to encourage the companies to start taking action, and the system even gives recommendations on how you can improve certain elements. If we see that your electricity consumption is not so efficient in your production facility versus, for example, in your office, we're able to suggest alternative providers so that you move to renewable energy. We're able to suggest also like energy efficiency IoT devices so that you're able to track and understand where you're wasting energy and so on. but really taking companies on the whole journey of, first of all, okay, this is my snapshot, this is my analysis, Plan A is doing this analysis for me to show me how I'm performing on an environmental level, to then the point of, okay, now we need to act. Here are the suggestions on how you can act, and here is your way to kind of close the loop.
How did you get to these conversion factors in the first place? How did you calculate those?
For every single thing we calculate on the back of the platform, we've developed our own proprietary formulas. These formulas actually have been certified by TÜV, so we have a third-party confirmation that what we're doing is legitimate. But what really is kind of the secret sauce of Plan A is that we have this really strong capability on climate modeling, on data science, climate data science, also on life cycle analysis, carbon reduction. And all of these people are sitting within the Plan A team that essentially focus on developing these formulas, collecting any conversion factors that we might not have, and then making the platform as accurate as possible and as real as possible to our clients using their own data and our internal data.
Okay, so let's say I'm trying to visualize what the assessment is that clients get, right? So the kind of things they could read in this report, let's put it that way, are things like what is your CO2 emission and what is the emission of competitors or similar players in the market. What else? What are other things that they can see there?
You can go quite deep into the data analysis. You can compare yourself to other companies within your field, geography, also other industries. You can also compare one department to another, one office to another. You can also compare the performance of employees in one geography versus another. You can also see how it's your plastic consumption, water consumption. You can even go into the depth of understanding, what energy has been wasted due to what kind of processes and so on. So like really granular level of analysis that is quite useful, especially for the larger companies, because it gives them a snapshot of where they're wasting money. Because at the end of the day, one common misconception is that sustainability is something costly. It's actually something that is quite, driven by efficiency. It's a minimalist way of working, living, producing that can only be optimized if we really have true understanding of where our data, is showing we're not performing so well.
Okay, and then clients get this snapshot, and then you already suggest, areas where they could improve. So, did you see already cases in which that actually happened, in that they accepted that call to action? Could you give me maybe examples of clients that, I don't know, changed a supplier or maybe a source of energy based on your insights?
Yeah, we actually have quite a lot of clients that on average have reduced by 15% for a year, and that's quite a lot. It's quite significant, and especially the larger the company, the more impacted that has. What normally happens is related to alternative packaging, alternative traveling kind of patterns. We have quite a lot of clients that have been encouraging their team to, either work from home or also come to the office with bike, which is kind of more on the employee engagement side. And then for others, like the most significant changes have been related to energy consumption and making it more efficient by introducing certain devices that can help you account for where energy is lost, or switching to a renewable energy provider. We really hope, and kind of what we've been doing over the last years is that we believe that there is a need for people that use our product, for companies that use our product, to have a comprehensive perspective on what they could be doing better. It's really useless if you're starting to look for all of the different types of alternatives and learnings about sustainability outside of the platform, because it makes it really complex. Because someone has done the analysis on the thing, on your environmental performance, given you a good understanding of how you're performing, and then you're like, okay, what next? What next is actually what really matters and what really needs to be the focus of the company. Because if you look at environmental, issues, if you look at climate change, the only way forward is carbon reduction on a world level. And that is why we really have equipped our clients with a deep understanding of how they can act. And we make sure that they really can dive deep into all the alternatives that are standing in front of them, so they can improve their performance.
And Lubomila, who are your competitors? Because there are other companies that do this kind of service, right?
Well, there's a lot of work that has been done on this topic before we existed. Plane considers itself a bit of the old guard on the topic because we've been for 5 years on the market, but that is probably in comparison to some kind of companies that popped up, in the sphere. The main competitors that we stand against are consultants. This is the traditional path, and we actually work with a lot of consultants because our system helps them organize the house. They can do this their work and focus on reduction rather than focusing on the calculations themselves, because at the end of the day we're not a consulting company. We offer a technology and recommendations, but who implements these recommendations is up to the company. So we often work with these consultants to essentially enable this implementation of change to happen through their work. Other competitors, or I don't even call them competitors, but alternative choices that you can make for sustainability is doing offsetting through offsetting companies. We're not quite excited by offsetting as an industry as it is today. It's really commoditized. Also, there's a lot of middlemen that take money from the impact itself, masking this as administrative costs, and that's why we work directly with project developers. We don't work with any large-scale projects such as like wind farms in China or something like that. We really focus on community-driven projects because if you really understand the problem that you're addressing, you would quite quickly identify that it's a human issue. It's a humanity issue as well. It's a social impact issue. And if you depict and you divide the two topics, the environmental issues and the social element, you probably end up doing wrong on one side or the other. These are maybe some alternatives to what we do, but for the topic that we're doing and what we're covering and how comprehensive it is, probably like the work of consultants that would be working by themselves is the most comprehensive comparison.
And what is your business model?
So Planning has a software as a service business model. We are working with companies on a minimum yearly subscription basis. And the reason for this is that it takes time to see difference. It takes time to see change. It takes time for the client to accustom themselves to using a platform that normally has never been part of the decision making and now is part of the KPI. So it really it requires some time, and they need to have our support on getting on that journey. And that essentially is our model. There's a subscription fee, and then obviously offsetting comes on the side, but we don't charge for that. We don't have a fee for that. It goes like we're just a middleman there. Like in the sense that we, just to explain, because I used the middleman earlier, in the sense that we just make the connection between the offsetters and our clients, but we only work with project developers. So that's, we just set the connection to happen. Well, the way the system works at the moment, or the way companies have been doing it up until now, has been like a one-off calculation. You do your report for the year. If you're a publicly listed company, you do multiple reports, and then after that, that's it. What has ended up happening now, due to changing regulations across the EU, across UK, and also the US, is that there's a lot more requirements for having an in-depth perspective on your environmental performance on quarterly, not yet monthly, but quarterly for sure basis. And what this means is that you need to start gaining understanding of how your CO2 emission consumption is changing on month-to-month basis. And why this matters is because if you do a one-off calculation at the end of the year, you're missing the opportunity, first of all, to learn of how you could be improving. Second of all, to really have a realistic perspective on your performance, because you probably would be using just averages and you don't even go into collecting the data at different points of time. And then finally, you're missing the opportunity to engage with all these stakeholders that at the moment are requesting from you to be doing work on sustainability. Investors, employees, customers, all of these people are asking what's your agenda on sustainability? When you have a software like ours, you have quite of a good partner in this journey, because you are able, first of all, to kind of put aside the focus on the data collection, because the system does that for you, and focus on what really matters, which is the reduction. This, first of all, prepares you for regulations. The regulations are going towards essentially limiting certain industries in terms of how much they can emit. It also gives you an opportunity to connect with others, other sustainability leads, and kind of learn how to improve constantly. And then finally, it really is becoming, a partner on this journey that you are going to be, in any case, facing, that collects certain KPIs related to sustainability. Because where we're headed is that KPI of CO2 emissions is going to be as equally as important as the financial KPIs that we have in terms of profit, revenue, and so on.
So it's about continuous improvement, right? Okay, let's go back to offsetting now. You do offer a few options on your website and for clients for offsetting carbon emissions. And this is a very interesting topic right now, because researchers have been finding out more and more about these projects in the last few years.
Yeah.
So what many researchers have been saying is, some of these projects, this maybe tree planting projects around the world, they would have taken place anyway, regardless the offsetting scheme, right? So in the accounting of the planet, then there wouldn't be a big effect. So another thing is the accounting itself, double accounting. How can you be sure that these projects are really, that these trees that are there are actually going to grow? Because it doesn't work right away, right? It's not that you plant a tree today and then you get the offsetting from tomorrow on. And not to mention some economic issues like leakages, for example. So let's say that you have a producer that decides not to chop down trees in one part of the world, to participate in one of these offsetting schemes. But that will then increase demand for timber, and then maybe someone else is actually going to chop down those trees. So all in all, it's a pretty complicated scenario, a pretty complicated scheme. How do you make sure that the projects that you're offering are, achieving what they really are supposed to achieve, and how are they audited?
So the big problem with offsetting is that the intentions might have been good in the beginning, but the system has grown into such a huge industry that now there's a bit of a blurry perspective on who is benefiting, why is this useful, and why isn't it. That is not to say that all offsetting projects are bad. The problem is that it's the simple math of money. And how it works is that, the currency is that per ton of CO2 emissions, you pay X for the credit itself. So the more CO2 you can claim, you have been able to save, the more money you can make out of this project. Trees are unfortunately still quite of a common suggestion as an offsetting project, because the quantifiable element is quite direct there. You plant a tree, and by the fifth year, it's going to be able to, compensate for X amount of CO2 emissions per year. Problem is that science has proven actually that around 30% of trees are able to survive, and these projects actually, are not necessarily bringing the value that they claim to be bringing, even though the money have been made. So what we focus on is, first of all, working directly with the project developers. What this means is that we really speak to the people that are responsible for the impact and are on the ground. We work with a carefully selected set of organizations, and we have a methodology that we've developed for that. And we actually don't necessarily only offer offsetting. We offer carbon capture, we offer social impact projects, we offer investments, we offer also, insetting for some of our clients that are able to set these kinds of schemes for their own operations. So really an array of options that extends your impact outside of the scope of your organization, except for the insetting, and allows you to see yourself as an actor of change that can afford to do it after having focused already on yourself for some time.
Since you're so close to this industry, to the offsetting industry, how do you see that developing in the near future?
I have a bit of a maybe controversial view, and I think offsetting as it is today is going to disappear. I don't think it's a sustainable industry, and I think it's just because we do not have a scheme, a way to manage our resources in a sustainable manner today. So we had to find like this patch up solution to enable us to feel guilt-free while we're doing our business as usual. Business as usual is not possible anymore. If you want to continue polluting as you used to before and then compensate, that is only going to be probably possible for a very short amount of time. Actually, for European Union countries, it's not even possible anymore. Especially the larger companies. And with this in mind, I think offsetting is just going to become outdated, and it's going to become type of investment you can make that does not necessarily give you a number you can put on your report at the end of the month or at the end of the year, but it's going to be something that enables you to extend your impact, as I was saying earlier, but without the expectation for someone giving something back to you.
Precisely. So let's talk about the environment where all of this is taking place. So you have in the European Union the Green Deal effort. They're now trying to come up with a taxonomy so that companies can really calculate and say which of their economic activities is environmentally sustainable. And it can be compared across companies, across industries. That's the goal, at least. And then you have across the ocean, you have the US saying and committing to reducing by half emissions by 2030. How does that impact your business and the plans that you're doing for your business right now?
So we're benefiting a lot from the zeitgeist. There's a level of, reality check at the moment that has been happening thanks to COVID, thanks to Fridays for Future. There's been just a lot of things that have played out. I would hope that we also had our part to play in Germany in particular, because when we started, there was definitely no one talking about neither climate change nor sustainability. And with all of this, of course, the demand for our product is a lot more clear. We definitely have seen over the last year a bombastic amount of demand, and there's so many corporates that want to work with us, and this is super exciting because obviously it allows us to then, start to see the impact of our work a lot faster because someone is adopting our product. This is great. This is fantastic. But I think if you look at also all these events that you mentioned, then obviously the job is even bigger and it's busier thanks to all of these changes. We have seen now quite a lot of new regulations for businesses, and I think for anyone that is a business owner that is considering how do they fit within this whole bill, the sooner you prepare, the better, because it's only going to be getting more stringent and more internationally connected. There's already discussions for transatlantic partnerships specifically dedicated to regulations or greenwashing, also on reporting related to sustainability. So it really is super exciting, and I hope we have a big part to play in navigating all of these changes and supporting all of these companies on their journey for a sustainable future.
So what I find interesting about Plan A is that, I mean, the company and you yourself, you play also an activist role, let's put it that way. So you were very engaged in all these discussions, also in terms of regulation. So recently, for example, you released a petition calling the EU to introduce more transparency standards for corporate carbon emissions in the region. Why is that important? Why did you decide to engage on that? And maybe to start, what is the current state of affairs? You know, how do companies release information regarding carbon emissions, and why should that be better?
At the moment, companies can claim carbon neutrality overnight, and that is really problematic because there's no way for the calculation to be checked, and also there's no way for all of the claims to be backtracked. And that is confusing for consumers, that is confusing for the employees of the company, and also that's something that does not allow for the kind of the public to really understand where they should navigate their efforts towards, because carbon neutrality is something that technically is kind of impossible. If you speak to scientists, you can quickly learn that calculating full scope 1, 2, and 3 with the full level of detail from having all these third parties submit data is probably only possible for a company that is as big as 2 people or 3 people, because then you have essentially, the perfect amount of information. So with this in mind, we think that what really matters is that whatever claims are being made, they're first of all with a backed by science calculation, and also they are done with focus on, how you're moving forward to reduce. Because carbon neutrality, we spoke about it in terms of what offsetting stands for, is not always the most effective solution, except for, of course, innovative options where you can use, satellite data to be able to track the progress of certain projects and so on. But beyond that, there's still a lot of work to be done. So the petition acts as an advocate for those companies that really have decided to take their journey to become sustainable, and they want to do it in a transparent manner. If you think that carbon neutrality claims overnight is going to make you sustainable, then probably, this is where there's need for our regulatory system, for the EU, also on a German level, to set some boundaries, because this is really hurtful to all of these companies that are really putting effort to become sustainable, and they really want to do it the right manner.
Precisely. And claims, we have seen a lot of those recently, right? And it's so hard to judge from the outside. Is that reachable? How do they calculate that? I mean, honestly, as an outsider, I think people are just lost, right? How to judge if those claims are correct in the first place?
Yeah. I think one tactic that always has worked for us is, first of all, to see the depth. If it's just one page, which it says like, oh, we're carbon neutral, then probably, probably some digging that needs to be done for you to be able to really understand that. But if you see a level of analysis where there's an immediate identification of what are the contributing factors to the CO2 emissions, and what is the company going to do to start reducing and so on, that's probably a good starting point. But then what matters a lot is the quality of the offsets, because they could have gone through an actual calculation, and the calculation could be correct or whatever, but the offsetting projects with which they've compensated their CO2 emissions at the moment are actually not necessarily correct. So what this means is that this offsetting credits are just not of quality. There's at the moment you can buy credits for €1 up until €200. So you can imagine what is the discrepancy in quality and also in kind of scalability of some of these projects. So I think if you question on one hand the content of the carbon neutrality claim, the offsetting projects, and maybe like the provider of the offsetting projects, because there's also some data that you can see there, and finally like see what steps the company is taking after this claim, then combining all of these elements, you can see if this company really means business, or are they actually doing it because it's cool these days to be sustainable.
Yeah, the thing is, regulation is coming, right?
We speak quite regularly to the European Commission, so I guess we have the chance to know some insights that maybe could be found on their website, but a bit difficult to dig. There's already regulation that is coming on greenwashing in the finance industry that is specifically related to disclosure of CO2 emissions at full. There's also there's a working group on sustainability and carbon neutrality claims. So that is again like setting boundaries on how this can be done, and this is going to be released in a few months. Like we're not talking years, because the EU has understood that they're going to start wasting money if they don't set, a legislation in a bit more of a fast manner. And they really want to be setting the scene for the topic, and they're doing it fantastically. And, the US now with Biden is looking into all of these examples so that they can adopt some of these ideas. So it's not a matter of years. It's a matter of months for some of these regulations to come in play, especially related to greenwashing, and also especially related to, a bit more in-depth disclosure, more frequent disclosure on a yearly basis. This has already happened in France, in Sweden, and the EU is following a suit, like as a group, and to put this on a EU level in the coming months. So I think a lot's on the agenda of all businesses. The thing is that at the moment, maybe there's not enough information for all to know how this is going to impact them. And, for this, I can recommend our academy, the Planning Academy, where we frequently educate people about what are the upcoming regulations and so on.
Yeah, that's on your website, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so my last question, Lubomila, since we're talking about this more active role that you play in this whole discussion, you recently helped to kick off a new initiative called Green Tech Alliance. So, what is that, and who's behind it, and what do you want to achieve?
The Green Tech Alliance is a community of close to 1,000 companies from all over the world. All of these companies are focused on sustainability and also on green solutions for existing processes and products. We are all based all around the world. This morning, for example, I onboarded a company from Peru, and I have a set of interviews already today again. And the point of the community is to support these kinds of businesses on their path for growth and open doors for them where they alone might not have been able to investors, to scientists, to decision makers in big corporates, and so on and so on. The community is totally for free. You only need to apply and be accepted. We have a scientific committee that essentially decides if companies are applicable or not. Those that are applicable get to be invited to an interview. The others not. So far, out of I think it's 2,500 applications, we've accepted 1,000.
And this is open for big and small companies anywhere.
Exactly. As long as you're addressing climate change with your business, you are more than welcome to apply. And the process is really straightforward. Like within a few weeks, you get an invitation for the interview and then onboarding immediately if all goes well.
Okay, Lubomila, thank you so much. It was really a pleasure getting to know you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Melina. It was a pleasure.